we made a product now where we're integrating Blocktrade as a payment solution into actually payment devices.
Today, I have the pleasure to welcome in the studio Christian Niedermueller. Welcome.
Hi, welcome.
Christian has a very long CV that I invite you to check on LinkedIn. He worked as a consultant for a Big Four. He worked during many years in banks. He works in Asia. He works here. He founded his own company. He's a GP. And I interview him today because he's also the CEO of a fantastic company called Blocktrade. So let's jump right into it. Can you present Blocktrade in a few words?
Sure, I can, yeah. So Blocktrade is a crypto exchange, a centralized exchange company, founded initially in Liechtenstein, but we moved it, or it was moved in 2020 to Luxembourg, as back then it was considered the place to be for digital assets, Luxembourg, and that's why Blocktrade was moved here. And we also have subsidiaries in Estonia, in Slovenia and Italy, and are more or less catering the entire world. We are available in around 100 countries, and we have around 70 digital assets currently on the platform. Yeah.
Can you give us some numbers, the volume of transactions?
Yeah, I mean the volume of transactions is very volatile. Let's put it that way. Now we are in a very good market again. Yeah, Bitcoin above 70,000 USDC, US dollars, Ethereum above 4,000 US dollars. So that's a great market. We see high volumes, but in general, the last 2-3 years were also pretty difficult. It was a so-called bear market. Sure. We saw low numbers, low volumes, and our volumes were the last 2 years between 25-30 million per day and as low as 50,000 per day. So no, but yeah, you know, like the last 2-3 years were definitely very volatile. Yeah. Now the last 2-3 months we see very stable and growing and numbers again from a volume perspective. Yeah. So yeah.
So and you said that when you moved it here, Luxembourg was seen as the future of crypto. I guess in terms of regulation, in terms of enabling good business from here. Is it still the case today in 2024?
I think quite some crypto companies moved again a little bit away, yeah. So still have some headquarter here, but also operations moved somewhere else. Let's put it that way. You know, it's always a question of, on the one side, regulation, and on the other side as well, talent, to have the right talent here. And I think you have a lot of, in Luxembourg, there's a lot of talent in terms of finance, legal, compliance, yeah, and that's also where we have some staff here in the Luxembourg office. But when it comes to product and development and more or less all the support functions, also other jurisdictions are very good or even more favorable than Luxembourg, let's put it that way.
Of course, and I think there was a big announcement in the previous weeks with BlackRock, basically saying, okay, we're now going big time into crypto. How is this impacting your whole industry?
It's impacting it in a very positive way, actually. I mean, me coming from banking and private equity, I have been preaching that this moment will come for a long time. And I'm very happy about this movement, and I was always also very convinced that this will be happening. You know, institutional money, there's a lot as well in Luxembourg, can only come in if the big guys are going to the forefront and are establishing capital market products which are easy to access, and that's what's happening now with the ETFs, the first 11 ETFs, which have been approved by the SEC in the United States, and I'm very sure that much more is coming. We saw days with hundreds of billions coming into the sector now, and I think this is just the start. You know, it's just I mean, especially in Europe, not just Luxembourg. I mean, Luxembourg I consider still as one of the very best countries in Europe. In Europe, we are lacking improvements on all ends. Yeah. And especially as well on the monetary side of things. Yeah? We are spending, all European countries are spending way too much money, and the euro, since its inception, is deteriorating. Yeah? We don't recognize it so much, but the last 2 years at least, inflation showed us that there's a big impact of too much spending, and this is something not crypto as a whole industry is fixing, but things like Bitcoin are fixing, yeah? So as a store of value and interesting transaction, way of transaction and store of value, yeah.
Perfect. Which risk and opportunities do you identify for your firm in general,
Yeah.
and for your industry in a more larger way?
So for the, let's start with the industry maybe. The industry was a very volatile and young industry. So you saw a lot of scams and like
FTX,
threats and like very young and unprofessional companies acting in the space. So I see it as our duty actually to act very responsibly in a very compliant way, to comply with all the regulations. That's very important there. And as an industry, I think you saw also the last 2-3 years a lot of people coming in from traditional finance, from the fund industry, from the banking industry, from the insurance industry, and this was very important from a professionalization perspective of the whole industry. I think this happened a lot in the last 2, 3, 4 years, and I think this is ongoing. A lot of smart money is coming in, financing crypto companies, and they're also demanding that you have professional structures, you have professional people in your company. When it comes to Blocktrade, for example, when I joined or took over Blocktrade 2 years ago, there were only 15 employees, a lot of things outsourced. From these 15 employees, only one is left. We have now more than 65 employees, almost nothing outsourced. We take over like the whole value chain of our operations. We are now trying to be compliant with ISO, with the most important ISO certifications. So the crypto industry is more and more like moving towards a banking light approach, let's put it that way, yeah? That's also what the regulators want. What's also something, as long as it's not taking too much like resources and money, something I would like to see, coming from a traditional industry. I want this industry to be perceived and act in a very professional way, yeah?
Yeah, let's talk maybe about this difficult point, which is regulation. I think you're a very good example. You worked for a Big Four, you worked in banking for many years. It's much better than dealing with some young geek. I'm thinking, of course, Bankman-Fried, for example. But of course, I can imagine also that the level of understanding of the regulator, especially here, might be maybe a bit limited, and this could reduce the speed or the opportunity. Where do you see the limit between too much freedom and too much regulation?
Very good question. So, I mean, I very much understand the regulator. I've been dealing with regulators now definitely for more than a decade, and some very intense projects as well. And you need to be careful as a regulator. You don't want to be at the forefront supporting like companies in an industry where mistakes are happening because they're young companies and in a young industry. But what I've seen in other countries, like for example in the UK with the FCA, or also in Austria where I'm coming from, is that you create some kind of like sandbox environments where you are like eager to test things as a regulator together with a young industry, and that's definitely a way to go. But then also you also need to enable through sandbox environments like this the development and the interaction. But you also need to try to understand the industry and try really to be positive on it. You know, knowing, okay, there will be some fraudsters or some like bad elements, like you have them everywhere in the fund industry, in the banking industry as well. Yeah, sure. You definitely have them as well in the digital asset crypto industry, but you shouldn't perceive the entire industry from the beginning as a like a darker element, or like you should perceive them as a positive, as an innovative element, as it actually is, what it actually is. Yeah. So.
Do you think the American regulator has a different approach compared to European or maybe regulators in Asia?
Yeah, I mean, this is like a very interesting question. The European regulators were, for not the very first time, but what we really are good in Europe is regulating things. Yeah? And now in next year, actually, a European-wide regulation called MiCA, yeah, markets in crypto assets, comes to life and is valid more or less all across Europe, or not more or less, it will be. That's very positive for the industry because you have the same rules and standards more or less everywhere. And you can do, if you're licensed in Luxembourg here, and you actually get a proper license then, yeah? Or you have to apply for a proper license. And then you are able to do active marketing and act very actively all across Europe. And that's still it's a very huge market with more than 500 million inhabitants, consumers, investors, and that's very positive. That's where the US are lacking, like, you know, like a red line. Yeah, they have like all them like their states, and they all have different imaginations and rules, and that's a disadvantage definitely for the US. And also in Asia, I mean, you have a lot of like single states with their own rules, and that's big advantage what's happening now in Europe. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's two things here. First is we're going back to a model of a cross-border business, which is fantastic, of course, for Luxembourg. And then if we talk about Asia, I think Binance is quite a critical player. We interviewed recently Javier Paz from Forbes, who told us that Binance is not really regulated properly, which of course is extremely dangerous for you. Because if anything happens in a similar fashion as FTX, the whole credibility of the industry is at stake.
Yeah, things like that, I think, will happen again and again. That bigger companies fail or don't comply with the regulation, as it also still happens in traditional banking.
Like
you know?
Silicon Valley Bank.
Yeah, or like Danske Bank. You know, like you have like compliance scandals all across the bank still. Yeah, but like, I mean, I don't think it's the European regulation and harmonization is actually pretty good, because it will make it much harder for unregulated players like Binance to operate in Europe. Yeah?
Exactly.
Which will make it easier for players like us who very much try to play by all the rules established to actually have an advantage over unregulated players.
And to deal with BlackRock or JP Morgan.
Exactly, yeah, definitely. You know, if you are in Europe and you have now European-wide harmonized regulation, and you very much play by the rules, it's for sure easier to deal with institutional players all around the world.
Of course. So maybe let's dream a little bit. How do you see your company in 3 years, 5 years? What is the potential for you and for Luxembourg?
Yeah, I think for Luxembourg, there's huge potential with the entire fund industry, a lot of banks, insurances here. Tokenization of real-world assets is definitely a topic. I mean, you have a really great player here with Tokeny. We're also partnering, by the way, with Tokeny. They are actually tokenizing, or we are tokenizing our shareholder base with Tokeny. So that's a Luxembourg co-project, actually.
Yes, Luc Valampin.
Yes, I know them very well. It's a great company. So this is something I think where Luxembourg as a country, as a financial like hub, can definitely play a role, a very important role. And for us, we are very much looking at actually, on the one hand, like building out our like product suite on everything around digital assets. Also talking to a lot of companies actually in the area of tokenization. I'm speaking out loud about commodities, metals. This could be very interesting for us. And on the other end, actually, we as a company are very much looking into gaming and gamification. Okay. Yeah. So we see a big like chance in two exponentially growing industries, being it crypto, digital assets, and also gaming. Yeah? And we are positioning ourselves in a niche by purpose to be something special. And we are saying, okay, we also want to get the casual gamers actually on board on Blocktrade. We actually started the Blocktrade arcade in beta before Christmas. We had more than 1 million plays since Christmas with our little games, mini games on Blocktrade. So, and we will professionalize this over the next few months and see huge potential there to play not just in the crypto area, but as well in the gaming area. Yeah. And the third pillar we are doing is actually everything around the point of sale, shopping, commerce. we made a product now where we're integrating Blocktrade as a payment solution into actually payment devices.
Wow.
And if you know PayPal, Pay with PayPal, we are also trying to establish Blocktrade as a player where you can integrate actually pay with Blocktrade, so with crypto, with all the assets you can have on Blocktrade, within all kinds of e-commerce solutions. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, we wish you a lot of growth. It's beneficial for your company, your shareholders, but also for Luxembourg.
Definitely.
This is Christian Niedermueller from Blocktrade. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me, Jerome.